Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. Yemen, considered as the poorest country in the Arab world, is falling apart. For the last several months, the strife in the country has seen its president being taken into custody by Houthi rebels, escape and take refuge in Aden. Now the country is witnessing bombings by Saudi Arabia-led forces, creating panic and mass evacuation of people, including thousands of Indians. The complex relationship between countries and interests in Yemen, as well as the Arab world and West Asia, is making it more complicated. What are these complexities and where is the region heading? What are the implications of this conflict on the global and regional arena? We will discuss all this today with Chinmaya Ghare Khan, a distinguished former ambassador, Nihal Singh, a veteran journalist who has lived and worked in the region, Professor A.K. Pasha, Director Gulf Studies Program, JNU, and Qamar Agha, senior journalist. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Ghare Khan, who is fighting whom in Yemen?
Everybody is fighting everybody in Yemen. Well, Yemen itself, the country, the entity called Yemen, the people there have been fighting for the last 4 years, at least. And it is basically Shias and Sunnis, Houthis who are Shias, fighting the Sunnis. The thing is that the Houthis have been demanding, fair representation and reforms and so on. They feel discriminated against. So their demands have not been met over the years, maybe over the decades. So they have started this war. And now if they are fighting among themselves.
They were basically a religious group.
It is a religious grouping. It is Shias versus Sunnis. But there are also these political things, because I presume that if the Houthis' aspirations or reasonable demands had been met, then there might not have been this kind of civil conflict there. But this is the problem with many of these countries, non-democratic countries. So in addition, now the external powers have got involved, because the Saudis feel very gravely threatened. They have an 1,800-kilometer border with Yemen. And Saudi, as we know, is a Sunni country, and Sunni Wahhabi country. But they also have a significant Shia minority, 10, 15%, some say even 20%, in the eastern part of the country, where all the oil wealth is concentrated. So they feel threatened, and they are convinced that Iran, which is the kind of a self-appointed leader of the Shias of the world, is deeply involved in what is going on in Yemen. So there is also kind of a proxy war between the two regional powers or two superpowers of West Asia, both with some money, clout, and big populations. So now the external powers have also got involved and are getting involved. Americans are definitely involved. They say they are giving logistic and intelligence support. It is a fact that Saudis have done this with full concurrence of the Americans. The Americans have their own problems with Saudi Arabia because of the talks with Iran, right, which has made Saudis very unhappy. So Americans probably see this as an opportunity to appease these Saudis by supporting them in Yemen. And now, as we know from the newspapers at least, that Pakistan is also sending some help, military help, maybe ground forces, air force, etc.
Jordan and Egypt are also getting involved.
Jordan, Egypt, all the Gulf countries are involved, with the solitary exception of Oman.
Yes.
We must remember that, because Oman has kept aloof. And then Oman does follow an independent policy. And Oman has its own concerns, its own problems. But so far, at least, Oman is not involved in this operation.
Okay, Professor Pasha, is it just civil strife? What's happening there? What is the...
It is more
how would you look at it?
It's more than a civil strife. Number one, the Houthis, as has been pointed out, were left out from much of the governing structures. But what has made the situation complex is the involvement of the former president, Ali Abdullah Saleh, who is himself a Houthi and a Zaidi. And he was president since 78.
78, and he was removed in 2011.
Yes, as per the GCC brokered agreement although he was not willing to give up power. But the Saudis have been after Ali Abdullah Saleh for more than 2.5 decades. They wanted him removed. There was a coup d'etat, assassination attempt. He survived all of that. And more important was his son and brother-in-law were also top military commanders. So the involvement of his forces, loyal forces, because over the last 3 decades, Ali Abdullah Saleh had built up his influence over much of the military in the northern part, at least north and western part. So what has happened is the Saudis alienated him, and they did not keep the second part of the bargain. That is that his son and son-in-law will not be evicted from the key positions which they held. And his deputy, Mansoor Hadi, he removed most of them, and that's how they felt alienated. And both the forces, the military-backed Ali Abdullah Saleh forces and the tribal Houthi forces, who had been fighting the Saudis for a very long time, they have come together, and they have expanded beyond anybody's expectation, because Houthis are dominating only the northern 2 provinces, major provinces, but now they control almost 40 to 50% of the territory, including Aden. And I think the President Hadi, he has escaped to Riyadh.
Yes. First he went to Aden and now he is said to be in Riyadh.
Yes, and he is seen as a Saudi puppet. The Houthis try to bargain, and then they realize that he is not independent. The Saudis are remote controlling. So that's how the resentment against the Saudis, fueled by Ali Abdullah Saleh's forces, has led to the expansion. And obviously, if the Houthis are going to be attacked, contained, the
So,
Al-Qaeda may...
did it all began as a civil strife? Did it all began because of the problems within the country? And has it now extended beyond the countries, as Mr. Ghare Khan was pointing out? What are the complexities of this?
No, the situation in Yemen was already fragile between the Houthis, the south. They want to secede from the United Yemen, and of course the Al-Qaeda. But Saudi Arabia has been a permanent player in Yemeni politics for a very, very long time. They have tried to balance one group against the other, and now they have lost contact with all the 3 groups: the Houthis, the southern rebels, and the Al-Qaeda forces, of course, which have strengthened in the eastern part and in Socotra Island. So in that way, the forces are now tearing apart Yemen in 3 different directions.
Mr. Nihal Singh, the regional politics, as Mr. Ghare Khan was pointing out, it's very interesting. Saudi Arabia and Iran at some point of time was getting together. There was a problem. The Americans found it very disconcerting. Now, again, in this conflict, at least they are on the opposite sides.
Well, they're very much on the opposite side. But we have to recognize that there are rings within rings. Because on the one hand, now there is a contest between the Saudis on the one hand and the Iranians on the other.
Right.
At another level, you have a much broader coalition which is being built around Saudi Arabia and supported by the Americans. A third factor is, as was mentioned, Saleh has become a key player again after he was removed in 2011. And actually, there was an attempt on his life at a certain point, and he had to recover, take a long time to recover from it. He is playing around with his own son, for instance. And the idea seems to be, as far as Saleh is concerned, that together with the Houthis, he and elements of the army which are still loyal to him, he is trying to get his son to be the next ruler.
Right.
So that is one dimension of it. But the regional factors are assuming much greater importance now, I think, because, well, you have, apart from the Saudi-Iranian clash, which is obvious, you have several other factors where you have a polarization, so to speak, because the fault line Shia-Sunni is one of the great fault lines in the whole region today, in the Middle East.
Right.
What we call West Asia. So there are these great complexities, and we have to look at the whole picture to try to understand it.
Okay, we'll try to do that. Qamar?
Yeah.
Qamar, the question is this, that, amidst all these complexities which all the 3 of them have explained so far, Now, what is Saudi Arabia seen as the solution to the problem, or is it part of the problem?
I think it is part of the problem. The problem in Yemen, two things. Too much interference by outside powers, as Ambassador Ghare has mentioned. So this is what going on for quite some time, and what has as a result of this, the government in Yemen has virtually failed, and this led to ouster of President Hadi, and he went to Saudi Arabia, took refuge over there, Now, Yemen, virtually divided into two parts, north and south. Virtual division is there. South part, you would find a lot of educated people, and they are also, one, and nationalism is very strong in southern part. They want to set up a liberal, democratic type of government. So this is very strong trend in south. Whereas in the north, you would find, the tribal conflict is very strong. Tribal leaders, some of the tribal leaders, they get paid by the Saudi Arabia directly, Saudi give them to buy their loyalties. That has been going on, Now, still, the situation is very fragile over there. Civil war, it's entering into a civil war-like situation in the north, and which is coming to the south also. I think, Saudi cannot handle this situation. There is a need for international intervention, the UN or somebody, or Americans led some, I'm not talking about the thing, I mean, there is still, because the Houthis and there are many groups, southern also, they want some sort of negotiated settlement among themselves, If the foreign powers, kept away, and some local initiative with the help of the big powers, then it is possible, to come out with some solution, and that is possible through election or interim government can be solved, because Houthis have agreed to this negotiation, but they will not go to Riyadh for settlements. They would prefer, some outside powers, working there.
Okay.
And the second thing, that situation is very bad. All the time, last night also, the whole night, the Saudi and the other coalition forces, they were raiding there. A lot of people are dying over there. The other problem is, there is a possibility, as mentioned by the previous, all these panelists, it will spill over to Saudi Arabia, and security of Saudi Arabia is also very important for us and for everybody.
And the Houthis are supposed to be moving into some of the, are expected to move into some of the territories inside Saudi Arabia also. That also is their concern. Mr. Ghare Khan, we are told that Yemen was a very peaceful country in the sense that Shias and Sunnis, who are in almost equal number, or Sunnis are just a little more than Shias. How did this atmosphere get disturbed?
External interference, covert and overt. And it's difficult to mention one party responsible for this, or largely responsible for external interference. It's very
External interference is what?
Well, I think ever since the Islamic Revolution happened in Tehran, I think it is no secret, and the regime in Tehran made no secret of its intention. They were first talking of export of revolution and so on. They stopped talking about that openly, but I think it is very much on their agenda. And as you said, Houthis are maybe 35-40% of the population. Bahrain is a Shia majority country. So I think it is all very complicated, very linked with so many other things, because the Iranians are anxious to be recognized as the regional power. Somewhat along the lines that we seem to be keen on recognition as a regional power. But Iran is a power in the region, but the outside world, at least the Iranians and the Americans and the Saudis, do not accept that. So it is linked with the political ambitions of these two major countries in the region. So it is entirely possible. We will have to wait for WikiLeaks to come out in course of time what exactly happened. But I think as of now, it is very clear that both Saudis and Iranians have been interfering in the Yemeni affairs. And I don't know how peaceful Yemen was. I don't think that it was all that peaceful over the years, because the north-south tensions have always existed.
Have always been there.
South was a separate country. Maybe the ultimate solution may be in going back to what was the situation before they became merged to form one country.
Professor Pasha, same question which I asked him. You know, this Shia-Sunni conflict, was it engineered from outside? Or has that country always had a problem, though on the veneer of it looked as if there was peace and things like that? And now, with these interventions by both Saudi Arabia and Iran, what is the benefit? What is the motive behind these interventions?
No, I don't.
Yemen is supposed to be one of the poorest countries in the region.
Yes, there's no doubt about that. You know, for example, just to give you one example, half of the Yemenis don't have secure drinking water. I mean, hospitals, schools, other roads, infrastructure is bare minimum. But I don't buy the argument that Shias and Sunnis have been fighting. It was the same case in Iraq. They lived peacefully.
Right.
In Syria, they lived peacefully. In Yemen also. Although the monarchy was overthrown of the Imamate, Zaydis, but Shias and Sunnis lived peacefully. I mean, compared to the Iranian intervention which is talked about, Saudi intervention has been consistent throughout, right from 1962 onwards particularly. And an ordinary Yemeni feels that the big brother attitude of Saudi Arabia has led to many of their problems. 3 provinces of Yemen are occupied by the Saudis, and during the Kuwait crisis.
When you say ordinary Yemeni, regardless of whether he is a Shia or a Sunni.
Yes, I have gone to both the places and across the border, and I have talked to people. They say these provinces are the cradles of Yemeni civilization. They belong for centuries to Yemen. And these Yemenis also are being very badly treated in these 3 provinces and across the border, especially in the town of Sharura. And about 2 million Yemenis were expelled by the Saudis during the Kuwait crisis, because Ali Abdullah Saleh had supported Saddam Hussein, and his plan was to take back these 3 provinces if Saudi Arabia and others disintegrate, because there was talk about that during the Kuwaiti operation, that Saddam would march, so on and so forth. So in that way, they have lived peacefully. But the Saudi attempts to bribe the Shia, Sunni, tribal leaders has led to the widening of the gap. And
Now, what was the motive in doing that?
to keep Yemen divided, poor and underdeveloped, because the Yemeni population is much bigger than the Saudi. They fear a strong, united Yemen. It poses a threat to Saudi national security, and the Shias may come and others may also take advantage of that. Exactly like they fear the Iranian, so-called Iranian interference in Bahrain, or the Iranian influence in Iraq, or the Iranian support to Bashar al-Assad. So they fear that they are being surrounded by Shias and apparently backed. But their basic fear is the Iranian revolution, which has articulated the need for social justice, equality, and opposition to institutional or monarchic rule, which is the root cause of the problem.
Okay. Mr. Nihal Singh, do you also look at it that way?
Well, I would like to amplify one point that, after the Houthis captured, 40%, 50% of Yemen, there was no alternative to Saudi Arabia but to intervene in some fashion, because it was totally unacceptable for a whole variety of reasons, some of which have been spelled out in terms of the Iranians being Shia as well, and of course being the potential regional power. So that is one aspect of it. The other is
this intervention, these bombings were inevitable. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes. After the kind of advance the Houthis were making, I don't see any other alternative for the Saudis, however reprehensible you might consider it, to intervene militarily. So that is one aspect of it. But the other is that the whole region, as you know, is on flame. I mean, whichever country you take in the region, for a variety of causes, some of it internal, some of them are external. So we are living through a very dangerous phase in the whole region, where one thing leads to another and one thing influences another. So there are no simple solutions in terms of it. Now, of course, the Saudis are saying that the Houthis must surrender. Now, that is difficult to envisage in a hurry, because why should they surrender when they have nearly taken over
half the
even
country.
Aden?
Half the country. Okay. Qamar, so if as Mr. Nihal Singh says, the solutions are not easy. What the Saudis expect the Houthis to do, they will not do. So now, who will intervene? Now, there's also a lot of talk of American support to this. But will America go beyond just moral support to these to the actions which is being taken in Yemen?
No, it's giving much more than moral support.
It's a logistics support. So what will be if Americans get more involved in this, then what will happen?
No, I don't think Americans are going to involve, But UN initiative can be taken, the big powers, both Russian and American, some sort. Negotiation can be started, because, so this is true. What Nihal Singh has said, Saudi will never accept, a Shia government in Yemen. But the Yemenis will also not accept the Saudi intervention in Yemen, because Houthis are not alone. They are backed by the other groups. Many Sunni tribals and Sunni nationalists are also supporting Houthis. That's why Houthi has reached up to the Yemen. And the second thing, the Saudi Arabia, the crisis is taking place at a time when Saudi doesn't have much money. Oil prices are gone down. Then they have also committed a lot of money to contain Arab uprisings, given huge amount of money to Egypt, Jordan, and all their allies in that region. Third thing, they have deployed 150,000 troops on the border. Cost is huge. Which cannot afford for a long period of time. And the other thing, the king is new. He has just came in.
Yes.
A succession problem is still there within the country. So I think there is a need for international intervention. And
okay, Mr. Garekan, you think international intervention is the best option at this point of time? What kind of international intervention?
Just one second. All these stakeholders should be called some other country, some neutral country where they should be discussed.
Okay.
Well, before I answer that particular point, I think we have to take this business of Saudis not reconciling themselves to a Shia regime. I agree with Mr. Nihal Singh and others who have said this at this point in time. As he said, since they've captured so much territory. But let's not forget that Abdullah Saleh, who was a Shia, was in power for 2.5 decades with the full support of the Saudis. So it is really politics. Maybe it's not the religious part of it so much. If the Houthis were to declare tomorrow, for example, that no, they will work with the Saudis, we accept the Saudi sovereignty, the fact that they are our big brother and so on, then things can change. But they are not likely to
They're not likely to do that.
Now, as far as international intervention is concerned, I think it is significant, but not so surprising, that nobody has approached the United Nations Security Council so far. So the Saudi intervention is patently not legally sustainable.
Right.
But that's...
Though you would agree with Mr. Nihal Singh that they had no option but to...
Yeah, from their point of view, they had no option. And if they went to the Security Council, the whole thing will get bogged down among big power rivalry. So they are right from their point of view not to invoke the Security Council, but still it doesn't take away from the fact that legally it is not sustainable. It's not even, cannot be justified under Article 51 of the Charter, which is the right of self-defense. It's not operative in this particular case. Now, I think the only body which we can think of is the United Nations. And like they had appointed Kofi Annan for Syria in the very initial stages, and Annan got together all the parties in Geneva, but they made one big mistake, which was a deliberate omission that they did not invite Bashar al-Assad to Geneva. Now here, if they want to really find a political solution, which Iran is insisting on, then I think the Secretary General will have to appoint some intermediary, some special envoy, and with consult all the parties concerned, bring them to some kind of negotiating table.
Yeah, as I mentioned,
Would you agree with that?
Ali Abdullah Saleh is a key figure. You know, the Saudis were instrumental in getting UN sanctions against him. You know, his assets were frozen. He cannot fly out of the country, and there are a lot of restrictions which he personally feels were at the behest of Saudi Arabia. I think this is one person who has actually led the entire country to this situation. I think his ego has to be assuaged and he has to be tackled.
He has to be part of the, if there's any international intervention.
And his pound of flesh is that his son should have a say
whether that
in
will
the
happen
governance.
Or not. Mr.
But
Nihal,
another point I want to mention is the Saudi intervention is not the first and last. For example, the Iranians have now sent forces to Iraq. The Turks are active on the Syrian front.
Right.
The UAE and Egyptians are active in Libya. So there are a lot of regional interventions at the same time which are taking place.
And it is good. It's only complicating the situation here further. Mr. Nihal Singh, very quick last words.
I think it's obvious that it will have to land in the lap of the UN at some stage. And one method is what Mr. Ghare Khan has said, through some special appointee.
Representative.
But the major powers first have to reconcile themselves to some kind of a solution. What framework?
Whether that reconciliation among the powers will happen very soon or not, we'll have to wait and watch. But the fact is that the people of Yemen and also many Indians who are being evacuated in the next few days are suffering, and there's a lot of deaths and disaster happening there. Hopefully that will all, at least there will be some solution to that. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue on the big picture same time tomorrow.